friends. So we've already talked about two of my autoimmune diseases. Today let's talk about the third, because why just have one or two when you can have three autoimmune diseases? Alright, so it's 2015 and I've been back in New York for a couple of years doing lots of research, and I finally decided that I am ready to record my debut EP mini album and start my career as a successful R&B musician. So I do tons of research and I find a really amazing producer out of England. I reach out to his team, find out that in order to record my project, I'm going to need to find $20,000 ASAP. All right, I've never seen $20,000 up until that point in my life. So I decide to do a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign. I think they call it a Kickstarter because it literally kicks your ass. So with a traditional GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign, you have unlimited time to raise your money. With a Kickstarter, you have 30 days to raise that money or else you lose everything. So I launched my crowdfunding campaign. It gets off to a pretty good start, but about halfway through, I'm realizing, yeah, this is cool, but this is not on track for me to reach this goal. So towards the end, maybe in the last week or so, I actually kick it into high gear. I get my spreadsheets together and I start reaching out to every single person I know to ask for a donation. And I'm following up and I'm feeling the feelings of the rejection and the highs of when someone actually gives a contribution. And it's a lot. At the same time, asking for money in this way is not something that we do culturally as, a black woman of Caribbean descent. No, we don't ask people for money. So I kept getting messages from people in my circle that what I was doing was embarrassing. And I started to internalize that shame. So I remember as I'm reaching out to people asking for donations, I'm literally saying out loud, asking people for money makes me sick to my stomach. But I kept doing it, and I kept saying that. Now, last few days, I'm really starting to see some momentum, and on the very last day, it's looking like this might actually be possible. Also on this day, I'm traveling with my family. So the night of my crowdfunding deadline, I am sitting at JFK Airport. We're about to go to Grenada to visit extended family. And as I'm watching the donations come in with my laptop on my knee, as it gets closer to midnight, I find myself literally shaking uncontrollably. My nervous system cannot handle this. And at 11:58 p.m., the last donation comes in to take me over the $20,000 goal. And it is just the most exhilarating, amazing feeling I probably have ever experienced up until that point. It taught me so much about myself and so much about what I was capable of, and it was just one of the highlights of my life, really. However, while I was in Grenada, within the next few days, I came down with the worst stomach pain I had ever experienced in my life up until that point. It landed me in the hospital in Grenada. And when I came back to the US and went to go see my doctor, she ran some labs and she was like, there are markers in your blood that are consistent with you having ulcerative colitis. She was like, you could go see a GI doctor, but why take all the time and do the whole uncomfortable colonoscopy? I'm telling you, you have it. She put me on a short dose of omeprazole and told me to go gluten-free. And actually that caused the symptoms to subside, so I didn't bother with a GI doctor. Years later, when symptoms came back and I was in an active flare, I did end up going to see a GI doctor who did a colonoscopy, and it was then determined that I have proctitis instead of colitis. Same shit, just further on down the digestive tract, pun intended. So what are the takeaways from all of this? First of all, the backdrop of this entire story is that I had been eating the standard American diet, but I had been eating it for years with no symptoms. When you take the standard American diet and you add high levels of stress or a traumatic experience, it often leads to disease. The other important thing to note is that the actions that caused me a ton of stress were on their own completely neutral actions. Me doing a crowdfunding campaign, me asking people for money, completely neutral. But it was the beliefs behind what I was doing and the shame about what I was doing that caused the high levels of stress that were the catalyst for the disease. And like, you literally have to be careful with what you say. I kept literally saying, asking people for money makes me sick to my stomach. And what did it do? It literally made me sick to my stomach. I caught that one after someone recommended that I read a book called Conscious Language by Robert Tennyson. And yeah, these days I am very, very careful about what comes out of my mouth. The other important thing to note in this story that actually relates to the miseducation video that I did last time is the sense of urgency that I created by doing the crowdfunding campaign. Were there other ways to come up with $20,000 that would not have given me an autoimmune disease? Probably. But you know, hindsight's 20/20. So like with all the other autoimmune diseases, I have been on medication for it for years. It helps mildly. But what has helped the most is shifting my diet. I found Dr. Brooke Goldner's autoimmune protocol in the fall, started doing it, really, really helpful. Also one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life for more reasons than just the food. But that is a whole different video. We'll talk about that next time. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.